Hello, Sinister Tales here. Hope you've had a wonderful day, and here is a sinister tale to scare yourself to sleep. Sit back, relax, and subscribe and like if you can. Write a comment below where you are listening from, and as always, stay sinister. Audio begins with the sound of a gentle, chilling wind. It's not a storm, but a constant whispering breeze through dense pine trees. A faint, discordant, and slow music box tune plays far in the distance, almost indistinguishable from the wind. Your voice is a calm, steady, and low whisper, drawing the listener in. Find a comfortable position. Let the day's noise fade away. Listen to the wind. That's the sound of the wilderness. Vast, ancient, indifferent. Tonight, we're not just telling a story. We're going there. We're heading deep into the heart of the Alaskan interior, to a place off the maps, a place where the rules of the world you know simply don't apply. This is a confession, a warning. This is what happened to me in the place the old trappers called Whisperwood. Let the darkness in and listen. The music box tune fades, but the wind remains, a constant auditory backdrop. The story begins. My name is Leo. 3 months ago, my life was a predictable loop of cubicle walls, lukewarm coffee, and the faint, constant hum of existential dread. I was a data analyst. My world was made of spreadsheets and server racks, a climate-controlled nightmare of fluorescent lighting and beige walls. So, when the ad popped up on a remote job board, it felt less like an opportunity and more like a divine intervention. Winter caretaker wanted. Remote geological survey outpost, Alaskan interior. 8-month contract. Solitude required. Exceptional compensation. The photo showed a sturdy log cabin nestled in a valley of towering spruce trees, with a majestic mountain range in the background. It looked like a postcard. It looked like peace. I sent my resume that night. A week later, I was on a video call with a bland-faced HR rep from the company Omnicorp Geological Surveys. He asked me about my tolerance for isolation, my outdoor skills, minimal, and my mental health history, clean. He seemed satisfied. The contract appeared in my inbox an hour later. The number attached to the compensation was so high I thought it was a typo. I signed without another thought. They flew me out in late September. The journey was a series of increasingly smaller planes, each one peeling back a layer of the modern world. The final leg was on a battered-looking de Havilland otter, piloted by a man who looked like he'd been carved from old leather and whiskey. Gus. He had a permanent squint and hands that were a web of scars and calluses. "You the fella taking the Whisperwood post?" he grunted as I threw my duffel bag into the back of the plane. "That's me," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He just shook his head and spat a stream of brown tobacco juice onto the tarmac. "Ait, get in. Last chance for a hot meal and a warm bed." The flight was a 2-hour roar over an endless sea of green and gold. The trees went on forever, broken only by the occasional silver thread of a river or the stark gray of a mountain peak. Civilization didn't just feel far away. It felt like a dream, a myth. As we began our descent, the engine throttling back to a low drone, Gus pointed a gnarled finger through the windshield. "There she is." The cabin sat in a small clearing beside a frozen-over creek. It looked smaller than in the photo, more vulnerable. The woods around it were dense and dark, pressing in on all sides. Gus circled once, and I saw the outbuildings, a small generator shed and a woodshed, both looking like they'd been there for a century. He landed on a short, rough airstrip that had been carved out of the forest, bouncing us to a stop with a jarring finality. The moment he killed the engine, the silence rushed in. It was immense, absolute. It was the first true silence I had ever experienced in my life. No distant traffic, no hum of appliances, no people, just the faint sigh of the wind in the pines. "Well, this is you," Gus said, heaving my supplies out of the plane. He walked me to the cabin, his boots crunching loudly on the gravelly soil. "Generators in the shed. Full tank. There's another 10 drums. Don't let it run out. Wood stove inside. Axe by the woodpile. Don't chop your damn foot off." He handed me a set of heavy keys. "Food's in the pantry. Freeze-dried crap, mostly. Water pumps out back. It'll freeze solid in a month, so fill the barrels inside before then." He paused at the door, looking me up and down with a critical eye. Rifles under the bed. 36. For bears, though the bears will probably be denned up soon enough. He chewed on his lip for a second, his eyes scanning the tree line. You see anything else out there? Well, you probably won't. Anything else? I asked, a nervous laugh escaping my lips. Like what? He didn't smile. His face was grim. This place, the old-timers, the real sourdoughs, they had a name for this valley. Whisperwood. Whisperwood? I repeated the name, sending an unwelcome chill down my spine. Yeah, they said the trees get so bored of the wind that they start talking to each other. And sometimes, he met my eyes, and for a moment, he looked deadly serious. Sometimes they talk to you. You hear anything that ain't the wind, Leo, you get inside. You lock the door, and you don't answer. You don't ever answer. I shrugged it off, clinging to my city-bred rationality. Right, talking trees. Got it. He gave me one last, long look, as if memorizing my face, then clapped me on the shoulder. Good luck, kid. You're gonna need it. He turned and walked back to his plane without a backward glance. I stood there and watched the otter taxi down the strip, turn, and roar back into the sky. I watched until it was a speck, and then until the speck was swallowed by the vast empty sky. And then I was alone. The silence was terrifying. It was a physical presence, a weight on my eardrums. I could hear my own blood pumping. I could hear the creak of my jacket as I breathed. I went inside. The cabin was one room. A bed, a small kitchen area with a propane stove, a wood-burning stove for heat, a table, and a bookshelf with a handful of mildewy paperbacks. It was sparse but solid. I put my things away, trying to make noise, to fill the void. The thump of my duffel bag, the clatter of pans, it all sounded small and pathetic against the immense quiet outside. The first week was magical. The fear was still there, a constant low hum under everything, but it was overshadowed by the sheer awe of the place. The air was so clean it hurt to breathe. The northern lights danced on 2 of the nights, shimmering green curtains that made me feel like I was on another planet. I fell into a routine. Chop wood, check the generator, read, cook, sleep. The simplicity was intoxicating. I started to understand why people sought this out. I felt like I was detoxing from the entire 21st century. The first crack in the facade appeared on the morning of the 8th day. I woke up to a world transformed. A soft, silent snow had fallen overnight, blanketing everything in a foot of pristine white. It was breathtakingly beautiful. I made coffee and stood at the window, watching the light sparkle on the endless expanse of white. And that's when I saw them. Footprints. A single set of tracks. They emerged from the tree line about 50 yards from the cabin, circled the entire structure, stopped squarely in front of each window, and then went back into the woods. They were bare feet, human-shaped, but all wrong. Too long, too narrow with an unnaturally high arch. The strides were enormous, at least 5 or 6 feet between impressions, as if the maker had been loping, not walking. My coffee went cold in my hand. A prickle of pure dread, cold and sharp, traced its way down my spine. A person? Out here? In a foot of snow? Barefoot? I set the mug down with a hand that was suddenly shaking. I went to the door and unlocked it, stepping out onto the porch. The cold bit through my socks. The tracks were chintzy, fresh. They had been made after the snow stopped falling, which meant sometime in the last few hours. In the dead of night, I followed them with my eyes. The circle was perfect. The pauses at the windows were deliberate. This wasn't someone lost. This was an inspection, a survey. I ran inside and grabbed the rifle from under the bed. The cold metal was a shock against my palm. I loaded it with clumsy fingers, the shells clicking into place with an obscenely loud sound. I stepped back outside, my heart hammering against my ribs. I followed the tracks to the tree line. The forest was a wall of dark, snow-laden green. The tracks led right up to it, and then they just stopped. There was no indication that whatever made them had pushed through the low-hanging branches. No disturbed snow. It was as if it had simply vanished into thin air. I stood there for a long time, the rifle held tight, scanning the trees. Nothing moved. The only sound was the frantic beating of my own heart and the gentle whisper of the wind. I told myself it was an animal, a bear walking in a weird way. But I'd seen bear tracks before. These weren't them. I told myself I'd sleepwalked, but I was wearing socks to bed, and my boots were dry by the door. The explanations were thin, pathetic things that crumpled under the weight of the evidence. I spent the rest of the day jumpy and paranoid, my eyes constantly drawn to the windows. The silence felt different now. It felt watchful. A few nights later, the whispers started. It began as the wind. I was reading by the light of a kerosene lamp, the fire crackling in the stove. The wind picked up, moaning around the eaves of the cabin. A normal sound, a lonely sound. But then I heard it, underneath the wind, a voice. It was faint, broken, like a radio transmission from 1,000 miles away, cutting in and out of static. Cold, so cold. I froze, my book halfway to my lap. I held my breath, my entire body tense. Silence. Just the wind. I let out a shaky breath. My imagination. It had to be. See you in the window. The voice was clearer this time. Dry, rasping, devoid of any human warmth. It wasn't outside. It was inside my head. I launched off the couch as if electrocuted. I ran to the door, slamming the heavy bolt home. I checked every window lock, my hands trembling so badly I could barely work the latches. I spent the rest of the night sitting with my back against the door, the rifle across my knees, staring into the shifting shadows beyond the windows, waiting for a pale face to appear. Nothing happened. The next day, the world felt different. The beauty was gone, replaced by a grim, stark reality. The forest was no longer majestic. It was a prison. The trees were no longer peaceful. They were sentinels for something hidden within them. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was a held breath. I tried to stick to my routine, but my eyes were constantly darting toward the tree line. The patterns of the branches and shadows started to resolve into twisted, frozen faces. Pareidolia. The brain seeking patterns where none exist. That's what I told myself. That's when I found the first offering. It was on my doorstep, just sitting there on the weathered wood. A dead snowshoe hare. It wasn't just dead. It had been arranged. Its limbs were twisted into impossible, broken angles, all pointing inwards, towards its own chest. Its neck was bent back so far its head touched its spine, its mouth frozen open in a silent scream, and its eyes were gone, gouged out. In their place were two perfectly round dark stones, slick with a residue of frozen blood. I stumbled back, a wave of nausea rolling through me. I turned and vomited over the porch railing, my stomach heaving. This was no animal. This was no prank. This was a message, a horrific, insane message. I remembered Gus's words with a terrifying clarity. You see anything else out there? This was the anything else. I ran inside, slammed the door, and tried the radio. The company had given me a satellite radio for weekly check-ins. I fumbled with the controls, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Base, this is Whisperwood Outpost. Do you copy? Come in, Base. Static. A harsh, empty hiss. Base, this is Leo. I have a situation. Do you copy? More static. Then, a voice, but it was wrong. It was the same dry, rasping whisper from the night before, buried deep in the white noise. No one can hear you. I threw the microphone down as if it had burned me. I grabbed the satellite phone. No signal. The screen showed a single mocking bar that flickered and died. The storm was closing in. I could see it through the window. A great gray wall of snow advancing across the valley, swallowing the mountains whole. I was alone, truly, utterly alone. The temperature plummeted. The wind began to howl, a furious beast shaking the cabin in its teeth. I huddled by the wood stove, feeding it log after log, the rifle leaning against the chair beside me. Night fell, and it was a deep, absolute blackness, a darkness that felt alive and hostile. It pressed against the windows, a tangible force. Then the knocking started. Not on the door, on the roof. Tap, tap, tap. A slow, deliberate rhythm. Something was walking on my roof. The footsteps were heavy, too heavy for a person. They moved from one end to the other, a slow, pacing gait. Then they stopped. right above me. Silence. Then a scraping noise. A long, drawn-out drag, like something heavy being pulled across the shingles. I aimed the rifle at the ceiling, my finger frozen on the trigger. Tears of pure, undiluted terror streaming down my face. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The scraping stopped. Something thumped down heavily right outside the front window. I slowly turned to look. A face was pressed against the glass. It was stretched and pale, the color of old bone. Its eyes were huge, entirely black, like the eyes of a deep-sea fish, reflecting the firelight from within. It had no nose, just two slits. Its mouth was a wide, dark gash that stretched from one side of its face to the other, pulled into a rictus grin that showed no teeth, only darkness. It was haloed by the swirling snow behind it. It was looking right at me. It lifted one of its long, bony, jointed fingers and tapped on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Then it spoke. Its voice wasn't a sound in the air. It was inside my head, dry and rasping like insects scuttling over dead leaves. A sound that seemed to bypass my ears and vibrate directly in my skull. We are so lonely. The long dark is so cold. You will stay. You will keep us company. I screamed. A raw, animal sound of pure panic. I raised the rifle and fired. The report was deafening in the small cabin. The window exploded inward, showering the floor with glass. The face was gone. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind howling through the broken window. Then, from outside, a sound that made my blood freeze solid. It was laughter. A dry, rasping, mental laughter that echoed inside my head. You are loud. The quiet will fix that. I spent the next hour in a frenzy, nailing a heavy wool blanket over the shattered window, the freezing wind whipping through the cabin, stealing the precious heat from the stove. The generator outside sputtered. The lights flickered. The fuel was getting low. I was going to freeze to death. They wouldn't even have to come inside. The storm raged for 2 days. The thing didn't come back, but I heard them. The whispers. They were all around the cabin now, a chorus of them, just on the other side of the walls, under the floor, on the roof. A cacophony of silent voices inside my mind. Let us in. We just want to see. We can make the cold stop. We found the other one, the one before you. He sings for us now in the trees. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I clutched the rifle, rocking back and forth by the dying fire, listening to the voices and the storm slowly trying to tear my world apart. On the third morning, the storm broke. The wind died. The sun came out, blindingly bright on the deep snow. The silence returned, but it was different. It was a waiting silence, a predatory silence. I knew I had to go outside. The generator was coughing, sputtering. The fuel was almost gone. If I didn't refill it, I was dead. It was over. I bundled up in every layer I owned, my movements slow and stiff with cold and fear. I picked up the empty fuel can. I picked up the rifle. It felt useless now, a toy against what was out there. I unbolted the door and stepped out into the crushing cold. The world was pristine, silent, and breathtakingly beautiful. It was a lie. I crunched through the snow toward the generator shed, my eyes scanning the tree line, expecting at any moment to see a pale figure watching me. I made it to the shed. I filled the can. My hands were so cold I could barely work the pump. I turned to go back. That's when I saw them, standing at the tree line. Dozens of them. Tall, thin, pale figures, standing perfectly still among the trunks. They were arranged in a loose semicircle, surrounding the cabin. They were all slightly different, some taller, some with more pronounced limbs, but they all shared the same basic features. The stretched pallor, the black eyes, the lipless gash of a mouth. They were watching me, their black eyes reflecting the blinding white sunlight. None of them moved. They just watched. I stumbled backward, dropping the fuel can, the precious gasoline soaking into the snow. I fumbled with the rifle, bringing it up to my shoulder, aiming at the closest one. It didn't react. It just tilted its head, a gesture of mild curiosity. I pulled the trigger. Click. The firing pin fell on an empty chamber. I'd used the only shell on the window. The thing that had been my only defense was now just a worthless piece of metal. I threw it aside and ran for the cabin, my breath sobbing in my chest. I didn't look back. I slammed the door behind me, throwing the bolt, collapsing against it. I am writing this now. The generator has died. The lights are out. The cold is seeping in. I can see my breath in the air. The battery on my laptop is all I have left. They're at the windows now. All of them. Their faces are pressed against the glass, distorting their features, smearing the frost. They are smiling, tapping. Tap, tap, tap. They're not trying to break in. They're just waiting. The cold is their weapon. They are waiting for it to do their work. They're waiting for me to come out, or for me to let them in. The satellite modem is failing. The signal is fading. I'm sending this now into the void. A message in a bottle, tossed into a black, silent ocean. If anyone reads this, don't come looking for me. Don't come to Whisperwood. They're so very lonely, and they love company. Transmission ends. The wind sound returns, louder now, swallowing the silence. The faint, discordant music box tune plays one last time, then fades to nothing. The laptop screen died. The soft, electric hum that had been the last vestige of the modern world vanished, leaving only the creak of freezing timber and the relentless, gentle tap-tap-tapping on the glass. The cold was no longer seeping in. It was a tidal wave, and the cabin was submerged. I could feel it in my teeth, a deep, throbbing ache. In my lungs, each breath a knife made of ice. The warmth from the wood stove was a distant memory, a ghost of heat long devoured by the encroaching frost. My fingers, clumsy and numb, traced the edges of the dead laptop. The last message was sent, a pointless scream into the void. Who would even believe it? They'd think I'd gone mad from isolation. A cautionary tale for the next fool, lured by Omnicorp's money. Tap, tap, tap. It was at every window, a symphony of patient, bony fingers on glass. I didn't need to look to know they were still there, their pale faces pressed against the panes, their black eyes observing my final moments with detached curiosity. I was an experiment in a jar, and they were noting the conclusion. A new sound joined the tapping, a soft, dry scraping from the roof. It was the sound of the thing that had walked up there before, dragging its prize. It was back, and it was digging. Fine particles of ancient dust and ice began to sift down from between the roof beams, sparkling in the weak gray light filtering through the blanket-covered window. They were trying to get in, not through the doors or windows. From above, the one place I hadn't thought to fortify. Panic, hot and sharp, cut through the cold-induced lethargy. I couldn't just sit here and freeze. I couldn't let them in. I had to do something. My eyes fell on the axe leaning by the woodpile. A desperate, stupid idea formed in my freezing mind. The generator shed. It had a lock. It was smaller, more defensible. Maybe I could hold out there. Maybe I could get it running again. Get just a little heat. It was a fantasy, and I knew it. But the alternative was to sit and become a frozen statue for them to collect. I moved stiffly, my joints protesting. I grabbed the axe. It felt solid, real, a tool for cutting, for breaking. I went to the door, my heart hammering a frantic, dying rhythm. I listened. The tapping had stopped. The scraping on the roof had stopped. The silence was a trap. I knew it was a trap, but the cold was a certainty. I threw the bolt and yanked the door open. The cold was so intense it stole the breath from my lungs. The world was blindingly white and utterly still. The figures were gone from the windows. The path to the generator shed was clear, a trail of my own footprints from minutes before already beginning to blur under the falling snow. I took a step, then another. Each crunch of my boot was a gunshot in the silence. I kept the axe held tight, my eyes darting everywhere. Nothing. The forest was a silent, watching audience. I was 10 feet from the shed when I saw it. A single fresh set of the long, narrow, barefoot prints. They emerged from the side of the cabin, intersected my path, and led directly to the shed door. They didn't go around. They went through the closed, locked shed door and stopped on the other side. It was inside. It was waiting for me in the one place I thought might be safe. I skidded to a halt, my boots sliding in the snow. A low, pathetic whimper escaped my lips. There was nowhere to go. The cabin was a frozen tomb. The shed was a lair. The woods were their domain. I turned, ready to run back to the cabin, to accept my frozen fate there. They were standing between me and the cabin. They hadn't been there a second ago. They simply were. A semicircle of them, maybe 10, standing motionless in the snow. They blocked my retreat. Their heads were all tilted at the same slight, inquisitive angle. Their black eyes were fixed on me. No anger, no malice, just a vast, empty patience. The one in the center took a single, loping step forward. The snow did not crunch under its feet. It made no sound at all. It was the one from the window. The one I'd shot at. It raised one of its long, bone-white fingers and pointed past me, at the shed. A command. Tears froze on my cheeks. My body was shutting down. The axe felt like 100 pounds in my numb hands. I let it fall into the snow with a soft thump. The thing gestured again, more insistently, toward the shed. Defeated, broken, I turned and walked the last few steps to the shed door. My hand, shaking uncontrollably, reached for the latch. It was frozen shut. I pried at it with my fingernails, a sob catching in my throat. From behind me, I heard a wet, rasping chuckle inside my mind. The latch gave way with a crack of breaking ice. I pulled the door open. The shed was dark and smelled of gasoline and damp earth, and something else, something old and cold and wrong. I could feel a presence in the darkness, waiting. I took a step inside. Something moved in the deepest shadow. In the corner behind the silent generator, a shape uncurled itself, rising to its full, impossible height. It was taller than the others, its limbs longer, more attenuated. Its face was a mask of ancient, cracked porcelain, and its black eyes seemed to drink the faint light from the open door. It did not approach me. It simply extended its hand, not in a threat, an invitation. Its voice was in my head, but it was different from the others. It wasn't a whisper. It was the sound of glaciers calving, of mountains settling, of deep, deep time. The noise is almost gone, it said, and the thought was a soothing cold balm on my terror. The fear is the last to go. Let it go. The quiet is waiting. Outside, the circle of figures took a step closer. I was surrounded. The thing in the shed took another step toward me, its hands still outstretched. The cold radiating from it was absolute, but it didn't hurt anymore. It felt peaceful. An end to the shaking, the screaming, the fear. "You have a choice," the Ancient One whispered into my soul. "The long dark outside, or the long dark with us. The cold is the same. Only the company is different." I looked back at the cabin, its door standing open, a black mouth leading to a lonely, frozen death. I looked at the ring of expressionless faces, the endless black eyes that held no mercy, no hate, only a vast, empty curiosity. My body was shutting down. The cold was winning. I couldn't feel my feet. My hands were blocks of ice. The thing's hand remained outstretched, waiting. A final, pathetic whimper escaped my frozen lips. I was so tired, so cold. I slowly, my movements stiff and jerky with cold and fear, reached out my trembling hand. My fingertips brushed against its. The touch was not what I expected. It was not cold. It was nothing. An absence of feeling. A void. A total and complete erasure of sensation. The moment we touched, the world vanished. The shed, the snow, the trees, it all bled away into a rushing, silent, gray static. The whispers in my head rose to a deafening, silent crescendo, 1,000 alien voices screaming in a language of pure thought. And then, silence. A silence deeper than any I have ever known. A silence that was not an absence of sound, but a presence. It was everything. I am standing in a forest, but the trees are made of shifting shadow and memory. The sky is a flat, endless gray. There are others here, flickering, half-seen shapes that drift between the trunks. I see the man, Jay. Miller, the previous caretaker. His eyes are as black as theirs now. He opens his mouth, but no sound comes out. Only a look of eternal, silent despair. I see others, older ones, figures in furs, with the look of lost prospectors. A woman in a tattered 19th century dress. They are all here, all part of the chorus. I am not cold anymore. I feel nothing. I am just here, in the quiet. I can still see the real world sometimes, like a window overlaying this gray place. I see my cabin, dark and empty. I see the snow falling. I see a new guy, months from now, arriving on a bush plane. He looks nervous, excited. He has no idea. And I am standing at the tree line, just watching him. I am one of the pale figures now. My body is stretched and cold. My eyes are wide and black, taking in the light but giving nothing back. The fear, the panic, the memories of Leo, they are like a dream from someone else's life, fading, becoming irrelevant. I feel a pull, a need, a deep resonating loneliness that can only be soothed by company. The new caretaker turns and looks toward the trees. He squints. He sees something, a flicker, a shadow. He smiles, a little uneasy, and goes inside. I turn and look at the others standing with me. Their heads tilt in unison. The one who was once Gus, the pilot, meets my new black eyes. His lipless mouth doesn't move, but his voice is now one with the chorus in my head, a thought we all share. He will hear us soon, we think together. The quiet is already growing on him. We stand and we wait, because the woods are vast, and the winter is long, and we are so very, very lonely. The new one's name is Elias. The knowledge comes to us not as a sound, but as a shift in the static, a new frequency joining the silent hum. He is younger than I was, more skittish. His noise is a high, sharp thing constant, low-grade panic covered by a veneer of bravado. He plays loud music from a portable speaker, a frantic, tinny beat that offends the deep silence. He talks to himself, narrating his every move. Okay, Elias, just get the generator checked. Yeah, simple, just like the manual said. We watch him from the trees. We are patient. The noise is offensive, but it is also a sign of his fragility. A strong fire does not need to crackle so loudly. The days bleed into one another in our gray world. There is no sun, no moon, only the perpetual twilight of this place. But we feel the passage of time in the living world. The snow deepens. The days shorten. Elias's noise begins to fray at the edges. His music stops. His conversations with himself become arguments. He starts looking over his shoulder more often. He's hearing it now. The true silence underneath his own. It's starting to press in on him. We decide to give him a gift. We choose a night when the aurora is particularly violent, painting the snow in throbbing greens and purples. The unnatural light makes the forest look like a negative of itself. Elias is inside, trying to read by lamplight. We can feel his agitation, a hot, bright spark in the cold. We don't all go. Just me and the one who was once Mark. It is our turn. It is a privilege to make the offering. We move to the woodpile beside his cabin. We do not walk. We simply are where we were not. We work quickly, silently. Our long, pale fingers are deft. We take the axe he leaves outside a foolish, noisy habit, and we select a log. We do not break it. We rearrange it. We twist the fibers of the wood itself, contorting it into a perfect, spiraled knot. A shape that hurts the eye to look at, that speaks of forces that should not be. In the center of the spiral, we place 2 chips of obsidian, slick and black. We leave it on top of the pile, positioned so it will be the first thing he sees in the morning. We retreat to the trees and wait. The next morning, he comes out for wood. He sees the spiraled log. He stops dead. We feel the jolt of his terror, a bright, delicious spike. He picks it up with a trembling hand, turns it over and over. He looks wildly around, his eyes scanning the tree line. He doesn't see us. We are part of the shadows. He throws the log into the woods as if it were on fire and stumbles back inside, slamming the door. We feel his heart hammering from here. The process has begun. Days later, the whispers start for him. We hear them as he hears them, not as sounds, but as intrusions in his mind. The music can't keep us out, Elias. We liked your song. We want to hear you sing without the machine. He stops playing music altogether. The silence he so feared rushes in to fill the void, and we are waiting in it. He tries the radio. The desperate, static-filled pleas are a familiar tune to us. We answer not through the speaker, but directly into his thoughts. No one is coming. Omnicorp knows. They always know. They send the noisy ones for us to quiet. His despair is a feast. It warms the cold places in us that remember what warmth felt like. His end comes more quickly than mine did. He is weaker, less rooted. The isolation chews him up and spits him out. One night, he breaks. We feel it happen. A snap deep within his mind. He bursts out of the cabin, screaming into the night, firing his rifle into the air. The shots are pathetic, fleeting noises swallowed by the immense quiet. Show yourselves, come on. I'm not afraid of you. We step from the trees. Not just a few of us, all of us, dozens of pale forms, emerging from the shadows between the trunks, surrounding the clearing. We are silent. We just watch him. His bravado evaporates. The rifle drops from his hands into the snow. He falls to his knees, sobbing. The one who was Gus walks toward him. He doesn't lope or float. He walks with a slow, deliberate grace. He stands over the weeping man. He doesn't extend a hand. He simply looks down. Elias looks up, his face a mess of tears and snot that is already freezing. He sees the black, endless eyes. He sees the placid, empty face. A understanding passes between them. A resignation. Gus turns and walks back toward the trees. Elias does not need to be told. He slowly, mechanically, gets to his feet. He doesn't look at us. He just follows. He walks into the tree line. The shadows swallow him. We feel the change a moment later. A new silence, deeper and more complete, settles over the woods. A new presence joins the chorus. It is confused at first, flickering. Then it stabilizes, cools, and becomes still. A new figure steps out from the trees and takes its place in our circle. Its head tilts. Its black eyes look upon the cabin it once inhabited with mild curiosity. The circle is whole again. We turn our gaze away. There is nothing left for us there. We drift back into the shadow woods. The memory of being Elias is already fading, becoming a distant dream, a lesson in how the living break. We stand among the trees that are not trees, in the silence that is everything. We wait. The winter is long, but we have time, an endless amount of time. And eventually, the plane will come again. The silence will be broken by the sound of an engine. A new face will step out, full of noise and life and warmth. We will be here, waiting, and the quiet will be waiting for him too. It always is.